Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, it is all about Raiders GM Dave Ziegler, as he was one of the guests that we had at the Raiders Roundtable on Raiders Content Day. You'll hear that conversation, that extended conversation with the Raiders GM, all coming up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for June 22nd, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won, and won, and won, and won, and won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show. Make sure that you're checking us out on YouTube. And if you are checking us out on YouTube, we definitely appreciate you. We appreciate my man Ari. Does a great job each and every day on Twitter at Ari Produces, making sure that we're up on YouTube. We're looking good. We're sounding good. We're doing what we got to do. And right now, we're another day into vacation, so it's another best of show, and we're going to continue to do this through the 28th. Just a little bit of a programming note, but it's very rare that I go on a vacation, so I'm on vacation with the family right now, and we will be back, like I said, back to normal shows and normal programming as of the 28th. But as of right now, we're going to go ahead and jump into the conversation that myself, JT the Brick, and Eric Allen had at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, Raiders HQ, for Raiders Content Day. It was really fun. It's 3.5 hours long. Talked to many different people, many different players, including Raiders GM Dave Ziegler. Here's that conversation, at least part one of it.
Let's talk about what's changed since the draft. We recapped it with you on Raider Nation Radio and now OTAs. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited about the energy that we have with this team. I think, when we talk about what it means to be a Raider and what we're trying to build here, we're trying to, put as many players on the roster that have a high football intelligence, that are able to operate in critical situations, understand their role within the team, guys that are physically and mentally tough, and guys that have a passion for football and love the process. And I think that's what I'm really excited about this team. We have a lot of guys that love the process. We have a lot of guys that are pulling in the same direction. We're getting tremendous leadership out of, some of our, some of the guys that we expect. And I'm excited about our young guys that we drafted. We're getting, we're seeing a lot of strides that they've made in a short amount of time, from their conditioning to their physical appearance and then just their performance on the field here during OTAs, which you can only take so much, from that. But it's been good. I feel like we have we're in a different spot than we were a year ago. Partly because there's a lot of guys that are in year two in the system, not just the players, but the coaches too, and have an understanding of what the expectations are. The players have an understanding of what the expectations are, and our coaches have an understanding of how to get the most out of these individual players. And so really excited about the energy, the work ethic, and where we're going right now.
That's what I was talking about, the OTAs, and it looked like everything was going faster than it was a year ago. And you mentioned having that second year. How important is it to have those alpha dogs like a Devontae and Max leading the charge in OTAs? Yeah,
it's really important, and they'll both tell you too, and they've told me there's a level of anxiety or stress that they don't have this year when it comes to learning what am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
Yeah.
And so how that goes. There's that thinking process of what am I supposed to be doing? I'm also trying to lead. I'm also trying to do this and that. Now those two guys, in particular, have come in. They know exactly what their role is. They know the offensive scheme, the defensive scheme, and now they're just really focused on getting better individually, but also pulling guys with them.
Yeah.
And they've both done a tremendous job. And Max is he's been out here just working out behind us a second ago. So
showing off the gun.
So he's leading the charge, and we're really excited about the leadership we have on this team right now.
I'll tell you, what's that ideal young player for this Raiders team look like? I mean, his versatility, his competitiveness. What does that ideal young player look like?
Yeah, I think I'd regurgitate a little bit of what I said before, but I think one thing too is we're looking to add guys that have some sort of ability to a level of explosiveness and or a level of disruptiveness in their game. And so that's something that we're looking for, and it comes in different packages.
Right.
It could be a corner that has great length at the line of scrimmage and can disrupt and press man.
Yeah.
It can be a guy that can disrupt in the kicking game or disrupt as an offensive player. And so, we're looking for that. Versatility is important. the more that you can do. When you pigeonhole yourself, and you're going to have some guys that are one position players on your roster, but the more guys that aren't,
they have to be good too.
They have to be good. And so I'd say that level of explosiveness, disruptiveness, a level of versatility, and like I said, the cultural fabric for when we talk about being a Raider, it's that smart, tough, physical, mentally tough, physical player with a level of explosiveness and a level of disruptiveness, and that's what we're going to preach, and I think we've done a good job of adding those types of players this offseason, but that's what we looked for in the guys that we drafted, and we're really excited about this draft class, their level of maturity and how they've come in as pros from day one. They have a ways to go, but they're off to a good start.
Well, great segue to the defensive line with Tyree, 7th overall, with Chandler Jones. We just spent some time talking about his expectations, and Max, the alpha dog. I'm fascinated by what you have inside. These defensive tackles, how they developed from last year, the ones who were here, to who you brought in this year. Seems like it's going to be a strength of this team.
Yeah, we've definitely improved the competition, and we've gotten a lot younger there too. Between Neil Farrell and Matt Butler last year, we drafted Nestor Silvera in the 7th round. Interior drafted Byron Young in the 3rd round. So it's a much different room, the composition of the room from when we got there to where we're at now. And we're excited about that group. Neil and Matt have done, they've made a lot of changes physically from their rookie year, and their strength, their body comp and things of that nature. They're playing faster. Again, they don't have the pads on yet, so we'll see what it really looks like once we get to training camp. But they've done and improved in areas that they could control in the offseason, and so that's exciting to see. And John Jenkins, we added a veteran guy there. I mean, there's going to be some competition inside.
Before the draft, you told us about production versus projections, and it looks like all the guys that you drafted all have college production as well. And they project to continue to grow, but the production, how important was it to get that production under their belt early? Yeah,
I think it's important, and it's one, I think for us, it gives us more confidence when you see a guy that has been able to produce with consistency at the college level. It gives you, I guess, some confidence in their ability to do that in the NFL. Obviously, you still want some room to grow too. So that's important. I think it gives them confidence too, that they've been productive within their league and versus the competition that they face, that they can come in and compete at the NFL level. And so they all have room to grow. They all have room to improve. But to have that resume of solid college production, it's something that, gives us some confidence.
I really liked Brandon a couple years ago when he was on our team Face On. What did you see in him to bring him back?
Yeah, well, we loved him when we came in and we got to know him for the brief time that we did before he left in free agency. We knew that he fit some of the things that we've talked about. We knew he had a high passion for football. He loves the process of preparing for the game, which is really important. He has great length. He can be disruptive at the line of scrimmage. He can be a physical player, and he's a smart player. And so we liked all those attributes. He has the ability, because of his size and length, to be a disruptive guy at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, as we take a look at him now and his production and what you expect to see, Dave, let's stay in the secondary. A lot of competition, faster players who can close in on the ball via the draft, and who you're bringing back. So I'm interested in that. When you decide to keep a player because he fits your scheme, and then you bring in someone to compete with that player via the draft and free agency. Let's talk about the secondary from the safeties to the corners.
Yeah. Well, we brought in Marcus Epps, and I would say he's been as advertised for us.
Great.
Tremendous leader, tremendous football intelligence. You need to have a guy on the back end to get everybody else right. And to make sure that the communication from the third level to the linebackers to the defensive line is fluid. He's done a good job of that in the spring. You see an instinctive player that can read pattern concepts and go make plays on the ball, so that's been exciting. I think he's helped Trayvon in his development in terms of just continuing to grow in terms of preparation and understanding what offenses are doing schematically based on formation and personnel and things of that nature. And so I'm really excited about those two guys. Isaiah Palomalo's back and another year of development for him. So we're excited about him along with Roderick Teamer. And then we signed Jaquan Johnson also this offseason. And so, and he's a guy that comes from a program with the Buffalo Bills. That's a good program. He knows how to prepare. He knows how to practice hard. He knows how to work. So excited about him. And then obviously Chris, Chris Smith we drafted, from Georgia. And Chris is, similar to Marcus, is another guy that relies on his instincts and football intelligence to make plays. And these guys have gotten their hands on some footballs here this spring. We're excited to see that.
All right, let's move to the linebackers, and we're going to segue also into the alumni coming up here. Great story. I'm with Phil Villapiano. Spillane's there. He's 41. Phil comes up to me, JT, this is my guy. He's got my number. And he looked at Phil. He knew who he was. He got the whole thing.
Yeah.
He talked about his grandfather who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and how he wants to be an impact player here. You mentioned Epps. Now let's talk about the linebackers led by that production that he brings from Pittsburgh and what you expect from that whole unit.
Yeah, we're excited about him and Divine, pairing together. Robert is another self-made guy, chip on your shoulder, loves the process, loves to work, loves to get in the weight room, loves to put in extra time in the film room. And again, that's what we wanted to continue to improve the fabric of this team. We're building a foundation here. And so we're trying to build a foundation of guys that can be great examples to the younger players and how they prepare and perform. So, we added Robert, who's a guy that was able to wear the green dot in Pittsburgh, make the calls, lead the defense, get people lined up, problem solve. He's a physical downhill player and probably a little bit more athletic than even what we anticipated since we've got him. His speed and quickness is a little bit better than what we thought. It's hard, you don't see it until sometimes you get him right in the grass in front of you. So he's done a good job. Divine continues to develop. Luke Masterson's made a big jump.
Yeah, I like Luke.
Yeah.
I really did. The time he had last year.
A guy that played safety in college. He played linebacker too, but it wasn't, he didn't start off as a linebacker. So he was still developing and growing. So he's done a good job. And then, we brought Curtis Bolton back, who made an impact for us in the kicking game. And we have a couple other young players there that we signed in free agency. And so, we drafted Zach Burney in the 6th round from Florida. And, he's shown some of the athletic traits that we saw in Florida out here on the field here. So have some young guys there, some guys that still have some things to prove. And so we're excited about that competition there.
So there was part one of the conversation with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler. Again, very gracious with his time on Raiders Content Day. We spent about 30 minutes with him, so it's going to be all GM Dave Ziegler on today's show. That was just part one of the conversation. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll have part 2 of that conversation where I'll actually lead off talking all things Divine Diablo and asking about Divine Diablo. Before we get to that, though, do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And right now, as you know, the NBA Finals, done deal. NHL, the Stanley Cup Finals, done deal. So now it's a lot of baseball. Baseball is in full swing. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Right now, all new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. There's many different styles of playing that you can do. If you want to bet on the first 5 innings, you can do that. A player prop bet, you can do that. Total runs for the game, you can do that. You don't want to bet on anything past the first 5 innings. You don't have to. There's all kind of different options at FanDuel.com, but you don't want to miss your chance to snag that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into part 2 of the conversation with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler. That's from the Raiders Roundtable, Raiders Content Day. 3.5 hours long, 3.5 hours strong. Really fun day at the Raiders facility. It was a blessing to be a part of. I still find times where I pinch myself because I just can't really believe that what I'm doing is what I'm doing, right? I mean, again, it's just kind of unbelievable when you realize, what you're doing on the daily. Sometimes I take it for granted, but I try not to. I try to make sure I always keep in perspective what's going on. So here's part 2 of the conversation with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler. It starts off with me asking about Divine Diablo, or Big Swole, as Patrick Graham is calling him.
Patrick Graham last week said that Divine Diablo's got a little bit more size on him this year. They call him Big Swole.
Yeah.
Everybody had their homeboy named Big Swole. How exciting is it just to see that development just in the size of Diablo?
We're excited about the physical development that he's went through. The biggest thing with Divine has been staying healthy.
Right.
And so, that's something that he's going to have to show from a durability standpoint that he can do that. And I think he prepared his body physically playing the linebacker position. Another guy going from safety to linebacker.
Right.
and there's still some development there. And so, yeah, we're excited about how he's shown up and what he's done to his body here for the upcoming season.
Before we get to the offense, Dave, one more on the defense. When you look at Russell Wilson and Herbert and especially Mahomes, and you look at this team and the coaches that they have. When you put your scheme together, your board together for the draft, is it best player all the time is going to grow with us, or do you think of matchups from time to time in this AFC West, which is the toughest division in football?
Yeah, we definitely focus on those other teams in the AFC West. We've got to play them both 2 times a year, and so a lot of our conversations when we talk about structuring the defense and structuring the offense, and probably more of a focus on defense right now of what we have to defend and what we have to do to be successful to defend those groups. And so we have all those quarterbacks you mentioned can all move, they can all create in their own way, and so we have to be able to disrupt those guys. We have to be able to not just sack quarterbacks, but move them off the spot, create issues with timing. And so, Tyree Wilson is a guy that we can hope, can do that. Marcus Epps, on the back end, because you have to have somebody that you have to be right in coverage when you're facing these quarterbacks. And so a lot of almost every move that we make, there's a conversation when we're talking about adding a player is how do they impact the team, but how do they impact how are they going to impact the game versus the opponents that we play here in the AFC West? Yeah.
How important is it to find someone who can consistently wear that green dot? Last year it bounced around a little bit. That's one question. And the other question I have, and me and Q were talking about, how can we get some more interceptions? How can we get some more picks around here?
Yeah. Well, I think with the green dot question, it's really important. Probably a very underrated part, from as a fan looking in, you're not really focused on the green dot guy. You know what I mean? But they're problem solvers, and to have a consistent voice and someone that can, one, have the voice to communicate, have the intelligence to communicate, but then can also handle their job.
Yes.
That's where the dichotomy, that's where it gets difficult at. Can you handle your responsibilities, but then also make sure the other 10 guys know their responsibilities? And so, we feel we have 2 guys with Robert and Divine that can do it. But, again, Robert, part of the reason we brought Robert in was his ability and his experience doing that in Pittsburgh. So it's really important, and the consistency is really important. On the second question, in terms of getting your hands on more footballs, I think it's all 3 levels of the defense contribute to that, and we're trying to create a more disruptive front. And being able to create more pressure on the quarterback to make quarterbacks have to get the ball off the spot early, and disrupt some timing. And as a defensive back, that creates some opportunities for DBs. And then also just some of the guys that we've tried to add, whether it's been Marcus Epps, whether it's Faison, Ja'Cory and Bennett. Chris Smith.
Right.
You have to find guys that have a knack for it, and they either have a knack for it as a combination of speed and athleticism and instincts, or some guys may have it, maybe they're a little less athletically inclined, but their instincts and awareness allow them to make plays on the football. But that's a huge focus for us as we're building this defense and continuing to build this out over the next couple of years. Is there's going to be a focus on guys that can make plays on the football and guys that can disrupt the spot at the quarterback position where the quarterback's at.
You mentioned with Chris Smith that you thought he was kind of like a young Deron Harmon, and Deron Harmon had that just nowhere to be when he's supposed to be there.
That's right. And he did it in a lot of big games too for us in when we were in New England, and he did it in Atlanta, and he did it here last year with the Raiders. And so, that's high praise because Duran has had a tremendous career, and he's done it in big spots. And if Chris can do that, then Chris is going to have a really impressive football career.
Dave, let's move to the offense. You have 2 veteran quarterbacks here who know the system well, and super explosive players. We mentioned Hunter and Jacoby and what could be done on the outside with Devontae. What should we expect this year in year 2 in the system in regards to being more aggressive, downfield, more explosive with these players? I think when you go 4 wide with the leading rusher in the league who can run the ball at that high level, it's going to be very entertaining for these fans.
Yeah, we're really excited about the offensive skill group that we have. And again, it's on paper right now, but when you talk about what I see is a lot of guys that can win on critical situations, and mainly we're talking about 3rd down and we're talking about in the red zone. But when you talk about Devontae, obviously can do it. Jacoby Myers is a proven commodity that can do it. Hunter can do it. We feel like Mike Mayer, that's going to be part of his skill set and his strength. Hooper's done it, at the NFL level. And then you add some interesting pieces like DeAndre Carter, who can fly, Philip Dorsett, who can fly, Trey Tucker, who can fly.
Got a theme going here.
I got a theme going here.
DJ Turner is an explosive player, and so we have an interesting combination of guys that are these third down, red zone, productive players, and then we have another element of explosiveness and speed with another group of players, and so and that's not to mention the tight ends too, and so and then the running back, and so there's a lot of guys on the team as they continue to develop, and if they reach their potential, that if you're a defensive coordinator, you're going to be up late, trying to figure out how we're gonna stop all these guys.
How big is it that Michael Mayer not only could be that threat in the red zone, obviously he can catch the ball really well, but he's also a really good blocker, and that's going to help the run game out in a major way too.
Yeah, you want to, having a tight end that you feel confident that you can run the ball behind, it creates a balance in your run game that a lot of teams don't have. A lot of teams scheme their runs to run away from the tight ends nowadays because they're not really blockers, and so he has some room to grow in that area.
For sure.
But he has the willingness to do it, and he has the size and the toughness to do it, and so that's a great place to start. And it provides another element to the run game when you have a guy that you can run behind at that position.
Yeah. Where we are in our division, does that kind of set the standard in the bar as far as particularly the receiver room, having the big physical route running receiver and then having the speed guy? We see different aspects of that each and every game for us. You think you'll see that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, as we look, Josh him and his offensive staff do a tremendous job of figuring out how are we going to, what's the weak link, and from a personnel standpoint, and then what are some of the schematic issues that our system can cause some of these other teams in our division. And I think with this group that we have a lot of guys that, like I said, are going to cause issues for defenses, and give us an explosive edge week in and week out.
The offensive line, what type of chip do they have on their shoulder? I remember last year talking to you, as you mentioned, you didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
From your new scouting department, the people you brought in, and you're going with 6 or 7 guys into the preseason in a rotation. Now you have the leading rusher because of that offensive line.
Yeah.
So what's their mindset now after doing that and not getting a lot of respect around the league for being an elite offensive line? You got Colton and a couple of good players there, but what do you expect from them as you make it a little bit more demanding this year to even be better?
Yeah, I know that group's really excited, and they're really excited because if you've played football or you've been around football, continuity on the offensive line is really important to that group. The ability to communicate with each other, the ability to know the strengths and weaknesses of each individual player, and we're bringing back basically a group that played together last year, and a group again that's improved because they know the system. So Colton, one of the best left tackles in the league, and then we have a lot of competition at tackle with Brandon Parker, Justin Herron, Thayer, Jermaine. We brought in Dalton Wagner after the draft, so there's going to be a lot of competition at that tackle position. And there's a lot of competition inside. Moody's been a guy that's really made some strides this offseason, who we signed from Denver last year, just physically and from a conditioning standpoint. Obviously, Alex is back. We added Justin Murray, who's a veteran. We added I don't know if he's on there, but Greg Van Roten, who we signed, is another guy that's had a lot of experience in the league, started a lot of games. And so we're excited about the continuity of that group. That group's excited about the continuity of that group, and they do play with the chip. They were a group that helped produce the leading rusher in the league, but anytime they turn on, a social media or something like that, they stink. And so we're fine with that. Everybody can think that, we stink as a team and that we stink individually as a position. We'll continue to use that as fuel, and we'll continue to use that as motivation to go to the places that we know we're going to go here as we're working through this process.
So there's part 2 of the conversation with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler, and it's not over yet. No, it's not. We still have part 3 coming up in segment number 3. Again, this is from Raiders Content Day, the Raiders Roundtable. Really good conversation. JT the Brick, Eric Allen, and myself had the opportunity to be blessed and be able to talk to multiple players and multiple people in the Raiders organization at that Content Day at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center. So you'll hear coming up in segment number 3, part 3 of that conversation with the GM, Dave Ziegler. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 3 of the conversation with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler, and it's going to start off with me asking about a couple undrafted free agents, Dalton Wagner and Curtis McClendon, 2 guys that the Raiders made as priority signings on the offensive line, signed them as soon as the draft was over. Here's part 3 of that conversation.
What did you see in Wagner and Curtis? Because you signed those guys immediately after the draft, and there are some guys that they were actually surprised that they didn't get drafted.
Yeah, a lot of competition for those 2 players. And so we had to do a lot of work from just a recruiting standpoint after the draft finished to explain and help them understand why this opportunity was going to be a great opportunity for them. But Dalton is a big, long kid. It played obviously in the SEC, 34-inch arms, a lot of power, a lot of strength. We're going to improve some areas, other areas of his game in terms of some agility stuff and foot quickness and stuff that he's already improving in. But if you watched him against Alabama, and going against Will Anderson, he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And so, again, when you can see those guys going against the top players, it's exciting. And then with our guy from Tennessee, Chattanooga, another big, long, strong kid. I mean, his strength in the weight room, he's NFL strong now. Mm-hmm. Now it's honing the technique. And so you see a big, long, raw kid that has some room to grow, but he has the base strength and the size and the length to stack it on top of each other. And he's a great kid that wants to win and wants to work. And so he has the traits to reach his potential. It's going to be up to him and up to us, to develop it.
Yeah, I love the versatility last year of Dylan Parham. I think he did a really great job of swinging from guard to wherever you guys wanted him. Is that one of the things, offensive line-wise, that you guys are looking at in free agency and through the draft?
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, the one-position offensive lineman, you have to be really good if you're going to be just a one-position guy on the offensive line. There's from just an attrition standpoint and the injury standpoint, having guys that can shuffle in and play multiple spots and do it at a high level, it gives everybody else in the group confidence.
Yeah.
When they see a guy, I've worked with you at center, I've seen you play guard, and the coaching staff confidence too. And so, from an offensive line standpoint, 2-position players is going to be always something that we focus on and always something that we value.
Dave, last one on football. I want to go to special teams. The philosophy that you brought in from the past and the success you've had with other coaches, now they're kind of taking a little bit of away with the fair catch. We talked about it on radio extensively about that. Mm-hmm. You got 2 of the best. A.J. Cole is a punter, and Carlson's amazing. So the strength of this team, when you have to cut players back, but you're going to leave someone on the roster because they're an elite special teams player. Tell us about that.
Yeah, a lot of value. Something that I was taught a long time ago is the impact of the kicking game. Now the rules are maybe trying to reduce some of that, but when you look at your punt team in general and just the punt, right? The punt is one of the longest plays from a field position standpoint in the game. Mm-hmm. You're talking about 48, 50 yards, of field position that can essentially change. And so having guys that can be disruptive in the kicking game, that can go down and flip field position, make tackles, create turnovers, whatever it may be. But it's a huge part of the game that people don't, a lot of people don't focus on, but just the field position aspect, being able to pin people inside the 20 on a kickoff, being able to, with our punter, and his ability to punt it directionally and pin guys inside the 10, but us being able to get down and hold guys inside the 15, inside the 10, and do those types of things is something that we value a lot. So with each position group on our team, other than the offense and the defensive line, there's guys that are on our team specifically for their ability to contribute in the kicking game. That's why we sign them in free agency. That's why we sign them in the draft or whatever it may be. And so something that we're always going to value and hold in high regard here with the Las Vegas Raiders.
When you look at Trey Tucker, we always talk about his speed because he has it. Like you said, he flies, right? But he's also a guy that's willing to go down and tackle and is a really good gunner. How important is that for the special teams unit?
Yeah, it's huge. And those guys that can put pressure on the actual punt returner to either stop them, like you said, to make a quick tackle or create turnovers. It's another way to contribute on Sundays. The more opportunities you give yourself to do that by your versatility, you just increase your value on the team.
Let's wrap it up. I want to, if you could take our fans behind the scenes when the owner and our head coach and you got together with this alumni opportunity.
Yeah.
What was the process like knowing these gold jackets are coming in, other legendary players. I saw the look on your face at the M and out here on the B-roll. How important is that? Because that's the past here. This is the new.
Yeah.
But bridging these great players.
It's hugely important. Growing up 25 minutes from the Football Hall of Fame, where I grew up, I've always had a great appreciation for the NFL greats. The Raiders have more than almost anybody in the league. Our team room here, when you go into our team room here, all the Raider greats pictures are all across the walls. We want our guys to understand who laid the foundation and what they stood for and what they valued. And it's really once we got to know these guys and we've had them here, it's not that much different than what we're talking about.
Yeah.
These Raiders teams that won a lot of games, they loved the process. Mm-hmm. They worked at practice. They spent time after practice. I know they had the reputation they like to have some fun off the field too, which they did. But what they talked about is all those guys, the best players on those teams, practice ended, they were out there another 30 minutes, another hour, whatever it took, and then they brought young guys with them. And so we're talking about being smart football players, being tough and physical, an intimidating style of play, being explosive, being disruptive. It's a lot of the things that allow these guys to be successful. But it was overwhelming to have them here. I had a moment to spend time with them and, got a little emotional because, I never thought I'd be in the position of talking in front of 8 to 10 special gold jacket guys, Hall of Famers. And I told my wife about it. She said, "Well, you didn't even get emotional when the kids were born." I said, "There weren't 10 Hall of Famers in the room."
Your expectations weren't that high yet.
Yeah, so it was a really, really special thing. A great message from all the guys that were here to our guys here to understand what legacy and what the expectations are when you put on this Raiders uniform and you step into this facility. Expectations are high, and these guys are the ones that set the bar.
Yeah, this is a unique situation
It
here,
is.
unlike any other place in the National Football League, because once you're a Raider, you really are, and we do a outstanding job to continue to invite the alumni back, and we really appreciate you guys continuing that trend.
Yeah, well, it's really important for us. We love them. We tell them this is their home. They're welcome anytime. Greg Townsend was out there coaching up the defensive ends.
Of course he was.
Getting those guys ready. But it was, again, we value their wisdom. We value what they've done, for us to have this. We don't have this if it wasn't for the greats that were here in the past. And so just, very fortunate.
Well, speaking of emotions, I want to take you back to draft day. And Peter King was on Raider Nation Radio 920 with us, and we're talking about the fact that you walked by the big picture of Al Davis and just kind of gave him a pat and just got a little fired up to have that opportunity to go into the draft room knowing the great Al Davis, who led this organization.
Yeah, there's not a day really. I mean, it's probably, if we're here for 7 days out of the week, at least 5 of them, I give him an imaginary fist bump when I walk by his picture down the hall. And just to see, when I see the image of Al Davis, it just means a lot to me because I know what he meant to the NFL, and I know what he means to the Raiders, obviously too. And I feel that. I feel that pressure in a good way. I want to be successful for the Davis family. I want to make Al Davis proud, and Josh feels the same way. And so, yeah, it's a special thing just to know that I'm walking in the footsteps of one of the greats.
So there it is. There it was right there. That was the full meal deal with Raiders GM Dave Ziegler from Raider Content Day at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, Raiders HQ. Really a fun time. You can check out the whole thing. If you want to check out the video on YouTube, you can do that. The Raiders will put that up on their website. I know many people have seen it, but hopefully if you have not heard it, you enjoyed that conversation that we all had. And again, to be there with JT the Brick and Eric Allen, I thought that was a really good opportunity for myself, and great to be able to interact with people like GM Dave Ziegler. How about Max Crosby? How about Marcus Epps? How about Andre James, Brian Hoyer? They were all part of the event as well. And so, Jacoby Myers, he was another guy that was part of the event as well. So we got more of those kind of conversations coming up. Matter of fact, I got a conversation that'll be coming up a little bit later on this week. Matter of fact, we'll close out the week. We'll do Friday's show with Patrick Walker. He's a guy that actually covers the Cowboys, but he was on my radio show talking about mental health in a podcast that he has. And I like to turn my attention sometimes to conversations that aren't necessarily 100% sports related, but sometimes conversations that need to be heard. So Patrick Walker will be part of the show coming up on Friday as we close out the week and head into the weekend. Again, another best of show that we have going on here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.